Hey, what's up? How's it? Aloha, welcome to Culturized. It is me, McCuddy. Thank you for being here. We are in the midst of season 7, so thank you, those of you that have been supporting the podcast, the TV show, and all of our other platforms. I do have to say a huge mahalo to Island Craft Fairs and all of their vendors, like our good friends from Humble, making our chili pepper water, My Sweet World 808, Mandy's Munchies, Ugly Sticks, all these people that have provided gifts for my guests. If you want to find out who they are, at the end of the show, we'll let you know. We'll show their logos and whatnot, all the goodies that they gave us. Before we introduce, let me introduce her first. I'm humbled. I'm excited. We're from the same island, and you're probably, if you've been following us on the show, you're going to be like, oh, it's a familiar last name. So we're creating a competition. Just kidding, we're not. In front of me right now, humbled and privileged, Sydney Iaukea, now PhD. Do we say doctor? Because, we've known each other years. Your sister was here earlier. I love the fact, first of all, that both of you Kanaka women, PhDs, and a lot of what you folks do is always, not a lot, most everything you guys do is culturally, Native Hawaiian culturally based. Before we get into that, a little bit about who you are. I've got this bag in front of me, and those of you joining us, because this is a cultured show, and or maybe you don't know. Sydney, can you explain why you brought a ho'okupu? Like, just culturally, because a lot of people don't understand that. How would you explain why you brought this?
Well, first, congratulations, Makani.
Oh,
I'm so proud of you and everything you're doing. And I mean, we haven't seen each other since maybe we were kids, right? It's been forever until that race this summer.
Right?
So, yeah. So when I think of you, I just was like, oh, yeah, what would be just something nice to share? And it's just a spritzer. It's a little hippy dippy.
But you know me. Well, because we're Maui. We're Maui. That's what it's in
exactly.
We had to stop at Paia.
Exactly. Before it was like whatever Paia is today. Uh-huh. So this is like a harmonizing mix. You can just spray it around. I might have one or two at my place.
Yeah, and you have candles. You know me. And speaking of which, we forgot to get a lighter. I love this. Harmonizing. See, I'm that guy too. I'm all about. Can we? We're just gonna now. Harmonizing. Here we go.
And it says Aloha Elixir, so I don't know how much thought went into it, but I kind of like this place. They're up Waialae Avenue, and they have cute things. And
I like it. Feel that? You guys like that? Everybody's got a smile on their face. You feel that harmony? Thank you so much for this. The fact that ho'okupu giving and gift giving is such a part of our culture, right? It's such a part of our culture, and I love that you do that. So that's things you learn on Culturized. A lot of times in any Native culture, you never go to someone's house or someone's place empty-handed, and that is what I love about you folks, because we always continue to practice traditions. So speaking of traditions, where did you grow up?
So I'm from Maui. Upcountry, and then we moved to Harbor Lights.
High school.
Kamehameha Kapalama.
So it's funny is because it's always when Sis was here, what high school you went? She's like Baldwin.
She did get. She always reminds me. She did get in at the end, but she was the one that really wanted to go, and I was like,
really
not kicking and screaming, but I was not super stoked.
You wanted to stay on Maui?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, I was really homesick because I went when I was 11 in the 7th grade.
Oh, you were almost a lifer.
No, lifers would disagree with that.
Well, I know. Yeah. Sorry, lifers.
Right.
They get so sensitive.
You're right.
So you went at 11?
At 11.
Wow.
But then your friends end up being like your family, so it becomes like that new family. Yeah.
And you were boarding, obviously?
I was boarding.
What was it like? So growing up on Maui, right? Upcountry, kahului, growing up with mom, dad, grandparents as well. The thing I love about you folks is so many cultures within you folks, family. I asked this the same question. But in your Manao and your Ike, what was more prevalent? Was mom the stronger one? Dad? Because Maori women, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's things that you remember learning about mom? I want you to think about those things, because if you're joining us on Culturize, we're sitting with Sydney Iaukea, my very good friend from Maui. But we're going to talk about some really cool stuff that you've been working on. But we're getting to know you a little bit better. So I want you to tell us what it was like first, going from Maui, growing up there, into Kamehameha School. All right, that's how we do it right here on Culturize.
Bringing you what matters. Viewers can receive the Star Advertiser digital full access subscription for just $9.95 per month. Go to staradvertiser.com and click on subscribe. Use the code AHAITHING. For all your money needs, Hawaiian Financial Federal Credit Union is here for you. Visit HIFICU.com.
Hey, what's up? How's it? Aloha, welcome back to Culturize. It is me, Makani. Mahalo for making us, a part of whether you're watching for entertainment or to learn. I got to thank Island Craft Fairs and all of our vendors from them for providing us with some treats and some cool stuff. We'll tell you about that a little bit later. But I'm sitting with Sydney Iaukea, a good friend from Maui, us off-island people, right? Growing up on Maui, we're talking about just growing up in tradition and culture. What are things you remember before going to Kamehameha? Things that you remember growing up at home, traditions that you remember doing?
Yeah, so my mom is Pakeha from New Zealand, and they split when we were young, and so we moved to Kahului. And what kept us sort of on the straight and narrow, besides my mother, who's the strongest person I know, was being in the ocean. So she paddled canoe for 40-something years.
That's right.
Right? And we were right across the street from the harbor. So I pretty much grew up at the Hawaiian Canoe Club Hale, Nakaivalu Hale, and Kihei Canoe Club.
I was telling Sister, it's always amazing because when you folks, of course, growing up in Makau and Kahului, water was the first thing. That was your family. You're a water family. I know I'm not supposed to ask, but how old is mom right now?
She won't let me tell you.
I know.
No, you can't ask that question.
You know canoe paddlers. You know anybody in the ocean. She is still like top shape.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
She is. Yeah. She's every time I see her, like when we seen her at the paddle race. That was probably the first time I seen her since I think when Leslie and I were at UH, I think, and I'm like, geez, she's still going at it. So
nice try, Makani.
I
yeah,
know.
She's not gonna let me tell you her
I was like,
age.
come on. She's always that strong woman. What in the water? What was your favorite thing? Was it surfing? Was it canoe? Or just being in the water? What was it about the water?
Yeah, thank you for asking, because that really is a major definer of who I still am.
Right.
And it's where I go to escape. So it was mostly just being in the water. We were on the swim team for years, and then paddling. We did the state races when we were like 10 and 11 or something, and then surfing a little bit later. I had a class at Kamehameha and really got into it.
What was it like leaving Maui? And I know you said earlier, like you didn't want to go. When you got there, even from that young age, was it even like culture shock, or how different was it coming from Maui, Makawao, Kahului to Kapalama?
It was hugely different. It was intense.
No way.
Mostly trying to fit in a different way, but it was also the way out. So we were at, not such a great area, and it was like the escape from whatever else could have happened. So it was like, do it, and let's hope for the best. And education has really has been the way out in a lot of different ways. Just
and that's what I love about you guys, because you guys always had this perfect balance of always moving forward with education, but always moving forward with culture. Like you guys, just everything was parallel, and you guys did it. Sometimes people think it's a weird question. What was one of the first things we talked about? Ocean, we talked about water. What was one of the things? This is what I want you to think about when we come back. Is what when did you realize? Some people get this. They take this question. When did you realize it was how important it was to be Hawaiian? So I want you to think about that. If you're joining us, thank you so much for doing that. This is Culturized. We're sharing, we're talking culture, whether it's social, whether it's ethnic, all those things. You ever wanted to reconnect with your culture, whatever it is. Comment down below. If you're watching on YouTube, get up at all of our socials, as they say, Instagram and Facebook. This is Culturized. Air and Sea Travel Center, best group tours throughout the world. Let's go travel and see the world to make beautiful memories. Call 808-951-9800 today. Long's Drugs is always here for Hawaii, providing your family with their local favorites and accessible health and wellness services to keep you safe and healthy. Make Long's a part of your day. Windows Hawaii. Trust Windows Hawaii. Hey, what's up? How's it? Aloha. Welcome back to Culturized. This is me, Makani, sitting with my very dear friend, Sydney Iaukea. We're talking about from Maui to Kamehameha School and how intense that was. Getting into Kamehameha School, the question we left off was, when did you realize how important it was to be Kanaka?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. And even saying like being in the water is cultural, because I feel like a lot of people still don't make that connection. So the fact that you even like group it, it's wonderful, because that's really what it is.
I think sometimes we take advantage of like that, but we're in Kaulu, the water is right there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we forget how cultural and how cleansing and how healing the water is, mm-hmm. right? And I think that's sometimes we say, I always tell people, hey, before the end of the day or the end of the week, jump in the kai.
Do it.
Just do it. Just get it off of you.
Yeah. So as far as like when did I figure it out? It took a while, and like I said, Kamehameha was interesting. I always kept wanting to go home, but it was like it really was such the opportunity, and so very grateful to have graduated from there. And then I went on to undergraduate, and I was still sort of like, and then I did the Peace Corps. And 3 years in Costa Rica.
No way.
And I could have stayed. So I was just like, okay, we're good, because I can surf here. I took my surfboard.
I was just going to ask you, did you go for Peace Corps work, or did you go because you ever surf in Costa Rica?
Right.
No way.
I was a Peace Corps volunteer with my surfboard just dragging along. So behind me, everyone being like, okay.
That's classic. Yeah. It's like the best of both worlds.
It was. And so, but I fell in love with the space and the people, and just beautiful environment and culture there.
Did you see similarities with their culture and our culture?
Yeah, and they really appreciated that I was from Hawaii. So what's interesting is like they had just gotten electricity or something.
That's crazy.
And they still knew about Hawaii because of all the old TV shows.
No,
yeah,
that was their view of Hawaii. That's
the
classic.
Original Hawaii 5-0. So it really took me coming back and going back to school and not knowing why I was doing it. And then I was at the lo'i on campus one day, and a couple uncles, we were at a party there, and I just remember one of the uncles said, he said, so Iaukea, what are you doing at UH? And I kind of answered like, oh, I don't know, I'm just figuring out. He's all, why don't you research your last name?
Ooh.
And for some reason that stuck with me. And for whatever reason, I listened to him and I started researching.
That's crazy.
Like so random, but not random.
And this, now we're talking lo'i before the center was there. Remember that
right.
was you?
Yeah.
So those of you that are watching, when she said lo'i, you're like, what? No, there used to be a time when it was just a lo'i, right?
Exactly.
You'd have to cross whatever that stream was from Halealoha.
Yeah. And a table, a picnic table. And that's where we were sitting.
We just dated ourselves.
Stop it.
Holy moly. All I'm thinking right now is sitting in the dark at the lo'i, right next to the dorm. So if you ever pass UH, what is the center now? The Hawaiian Studies Center now there at the lo'i. What's it called? See, you know, it's not that we don't care. It just wasn't there when we were.
Right.
So uncles.
It wasn't as ingrained.
That's what it was.
Today, yeah.
I love that you're sitting at a lo'i, and these two uncles are like, go.
And I'm
figure
with
out
my
who
mom
you
and
are.
sister, and I actually had someone took a picture of us. So we're literally at the picnic table. Someone took a picture of my back, my sister, and my mom's off somewhere, and then the two uncles are sitting across from us. And I still see one of them around today, and I'm kind of like, hey, and he's just like, okay. I told him years ago, I was like, thank you for saying that because I researched.
Wow. And that's when you're like, okay, this is the importance. This is who I am.
This is why I'm here at UH. This is because once I started researching, then it just all came out.
So there you go. And I love the fact that you said, because a lot of times we feel like we get to this space where, oh, I don't like learn, or I'm too old, or I'm too this. And that's what a lot of times even for us, that's what college was about. We didn't know. I used to tell my friends, if you knew what you wanted to do when you got into college, then you're not here for the right reason. It took me some time, right? It took us some time.
Right.
If you're joining us, that's what we're talking about. We're going to get into something that you studied and you've been presenting on. If you ever wondered about the overthrow of the monarchy of Hawaii, stick around for this one. It's Culturized. At Aloha Kia, you know a guy. Visit them at any of their 7 dealerships statewide. Purchase a brand new Kia using Aloha Kia Express. Learn more at alohakia.com. Hey, what's up? How's it? Aloha, it is me, Makani. Welcome back to Culturized, sitting with Sydney Iaukea, PhD. Your PhD was in?
Political science.
Political science. Ooh, that's a good one. Now, we talked about your life growing up, Maui, Kamehameha School, realizing the depth, the power, and who you were as an Iaukea, right? It's funny because every time I say it, I can see Dad in my head, right? And this power. After that, what from political science, and then you got into, you've written a few books. What were the 2 books that you wrote?
So the first one is The Queen and I, a story of dispossessions and reconnections in Hawaii.
When did that book come out? Reconnections. It's funny, and you guys agree right here. There's always this organic theme that happens when we shoot our seasons. I think I'm just gonna come. I think it's reconnection, right? Haven't we said that word a few times already? Reconnecting with culture. The Queen and I, the first book. Why did you write it?
Why are you giving me chicken skin?
I know, right? It is. It's all these things happen. It's like, man, reconnecting. Is that part of the reason why you wrote the book?
Yes. So I started researching, and then there was an Iaukea collection at the Hawaii State Archives that wasn't open for the public, but the lady that was in charge at the time let me see the collection.
No way.
And it had this intense narrative about the queen after the overthrow and all the land things that she had to go through. And my kupuna was one of her first trustees helping her.
Not a lot of people know about this.
Yeah.
That is intense.
intense.
Was there a reason why they were under wraps, or
It just hadn't gotten to see the light of the day yet. Like they were just trying to. There were so many things at the archives, and in my mind, it's underground. Even though I've been to their special collection, not for the public. I forget if it's upstairs or downstairs or wherever it is. But for me, it was like this shrouded narrative that was put there actually by my kupuna because he was on the archives board towards the end of his life. So there's this whole narrative. And then he wanted his book written, and he had commissioned someone to do it, and she breached his trust. So there's all this information in his own words that I found as a political scientist, and he was a political figure.
No way.
It was pretty intense.
And was it just his mana'o and ike on what was going on at the time? What periods of Hawaii are we looking at?
So it's just, he starts writing his earlier book that my great aunt published from some of these papers is his early life. And the ones that I came across, and then I had to go to the first district court to really pull up, was about the Queen's trust deed and the attempts to break it by Prince Kuhio, and also the Crown Land revenues in 1909. So this is 1909. 1909, she's fighting for the Crown Land revenues in Washington, D.C. She's forming her trustee. 1915, there's a bill of complaint. She dies in 1917. It's settled in 1918, and my kupuna was there to represent her. And so when you asked that earlier question about growing up Iaukea, like I had sort of mixed experience with my own family and land. So when I found all this, it made me feel closer to my family, actually.
I like that you said that, because where I work at the Healing Center in Waianae, I always share with my clients about that. We do these workshops and these lessons on self-discovery, and I always have to preempt them with, when you're going to start to research your mo'oku'auhau, whether you're Native Hawaiian or not, whether you're going to research your genealogy, I always tell them they got to be prepared, right? You're going to find some things out that'll either make you extremely happy, and some things that'll be like, whoa, and then you got to decipher that. I'm totally tripping out. So when you wrote this book, it was just about
It was my PhD dissertation. So luckily my committee let me just take it and run.
That's so cool.
And so they let me use my kupuna's chapters. Like I use a portion at the beginning of each chapter. Then I do my own analysis and historical stuff and work through like the history. So it's like this whole, for me, it's like understanding Hawaii's history is understanding myself and understanding everyone in the process.
There is so much we don't know about the overthrow and about the Queen, but you want to learn more, you're going to have to go to our extended version. If you're watching us on network, thank you so much for doing that. First of all, I got to say we got some gifts for you. But I want to get into this more. I'm all intrigued, because we think we know about the overthrow, but there's all these little things that maybe we don't know. Maybe you do know. If you do, comment down below. Go see us over at the extended version of YouTube. But I do have to say mahalo for making time and being here on Culturized. Hey, what's up? How's it? Aloha, this is me, Makani. Thank you for joining us. If you're on YouTube right now, this is the extended version. If you jumped over from network, thank you so much for doing that. I'd like to thank all of our sponsors, Island Crafts Fairs, and all of their vendors, which you'll get to see who they are shortly. But we're sitting with Cindy Iaukea. I want to get back into. We just spent the last few minutes talking about who she is, but most importantly, parts of history that and some of you that are watching, you may be versed in the overthrow of the monarchy. You may be versed in some things like that, but you, just by researching your family, there was all these other things about the Queen that I didn't even know about all these things, right? And your latest project, which I got to watch, it was a TED Talk.
Yeah, it's a TED Ed
That's
animation.
What it is. TED Ed. Yeah. What was the name of it?
The Dark History of the Overthrow of Hawaii.
I like how it's put together, because it's not, one, it draws you in because it already says the Dark History of the Overthrow, right? And then it's like it's this animated thing, but it, whether you're used to, whether you have knowledge of the overthrow, or even if you don't, it draws you in. Like, it tells you, how did this project come up?
Out of the blue.
Really?
Yep.
Not like this, I'm going to plan it, just hoilona.
I really don't plan too much.
I like that.
I feel like it just sort of goes, or I get blocked, or it goes.
Okay, that makes me feel good, because sometimes I'm not a planner. I'm terrible, and things just come out. I'm like, oh, that was pretty good.
So one of the producers emailed me. She had read my book, and she had been to Hawaii and Iolani Palace. And so she just found my email somewhere. I have no idea. Because this is before I had a website or anything. After it came out, I'm like, oh, I should put up a website or something, right?
I wrote a book.
Right.
Come on.
But yeah, I never really thought about things like that. So they're in New York.
So the second book was right before this?
No, the second book is Ke Ka'a, The Making and Saving of North Beach, West Maui.
That's what we're going to get into that. But I was trying to figure out the timeline.
Oh, the TED Ed thing is recent. It's just this last February.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so tell us let's get back into that. So this lady found your email.
Found my email. I'm a producer with TED Ed, and I'm like, I don't know who that is. So I started researching.
Have you ever did a TED Talk?
What's TED Ed? No.
Really?
I know TED, but I didn't know they have this whole educational arm. And so it's actually a lesson for students around the world.
No way.
It is. And so I wrote a lesson part to it. Mm-hmm. It's attached to the video, and teachers can walk their students through some of the aspects of the overthrow. So anyway, she got in touch with me, and she said, can you write something about that we might do an animation for it? Apparently, thousands of people applied to do these things.
Really?
So I turned something in, and they liked it, but then we rewrote most of it.
Okay, so you're thinking overthrow. What's the first thing you thought of? Like, how are you gonna in an animation? Mm-hmm. What was the first thing you wanted to cover?
Well, they wanted me to talk about the Queen, so I was like, okay, let's talk about after 1900, because I feel like nobody knows all the drama and all the legal cases she went through, and they're like, no, we want the earlier ones. So sure, let's do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you initially think that title, The Dark History? Or was it,
No.
I'm just gonna share with them just the history?
No, the whole thing was, I would put something out and they would change it. They're in New York and Brazil, so they have no idea about but they're so smart. And then they would double check me.
No.
And I'm like, go ahead.
The PhD.
Do it. Like, yeah, and I would send them archival research that I found out new things. So then it's actually better than what I probably originally thought it could be, but at the same time, it wasn't like necessarily the message. It has aspects of it. I wanted them to say some things like more directly. And I understand why they didn't. I'm just happy the narrative's out there.
That's what I was going to ask. Is do you think, and it shows it in history, do you think that they wanted to change the narrative, the truth narrative to theirs?
So just going back to the title. So the title was actually the very last thing. Like, we had agreed to that dark narrative part, dark history. And then right when it came out that day, they changed it to how Hawaii became the 50th state. And I'm like, hold up.
Oh, no way.
No.
So that's a perfect quantifier of sure that there's not a lot of people that really understand.
There's not. But because it took a year. Like, these things take a year. I'm currently working on another one. But so I know them at this point, and we trust each other. So when I said you cannot call it that because people will not be happy, so they changed it back.
I like that.
But actually, they had already released it, so they changed it like an hour later.
Yeah. Oh, they didn't want to tell you. But I like the fact that at least they were like, okay, because that's usually what happens to Hawaiian history, right? It's they'll talk to the Hawaiian and say, this is what happened. Oh, let me give you our version of it.
Sure. Or even, I will say, even people in our own community are not comfortable with all of the facts and the truth, or maybe they learned a different way. So it's a challenge to just even broach the topic. So what I appreciate about the TED people is they're so smart and on the ball that as they can see truth. And
it's funny you say that about them,
it.
because I was thinking the same thing about you. It's like, I appreciate the fact that you were like, no, this is what I'm going to tell you. You may know about the overthrow generally, but let me tell you all those in-betweens.
Right. Because you know why? Because it's personal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just personal because our family was directly in it. All our families were directly in it.
Why? What makes it the dark history? Like things that were within this animation and things that were within this lesson. What made it dark? Or for them to even call it that.
Yeah, the almost incessant need to still cover it up.
Ooh.
And not talk about it. Like, that's dark. Like, we know, we have our researchers, we have our writers, we have our speakers, we know, we've been through the archives. There's been enough information, and there's still a resistance.
Ooh.
And so that's, to me, that's the dark part.
That it totally makes sense. It's like, it's almost as though you're like, I'm telling you. How do I know? Got that. How do you know? I got archives, and they're still like, maybe not.
Or
maybe not.
it's just like, it's almost like an emotional leap you have to take to accept it somehow, because it is emotional. So as a political scientist, the idea is like, nothing's emotional. But in my book, I write about it's all emotional. How can it not be emotion? It's all interconnected.
And that's, I didn't realize, and correct me if I'm wrong, even during that whole time, I didn't realize how political, or the politicking that went on, even within our monarchy.
Yes.
Nobody knew.
Right.
Like they would, correct me if I'm wrong, but they would think like, oh, queen became the queen because she became the queen. But there was voting.
Right.
So it wasn't really because you're not necessarily the heir, but I didn't realize.
Well, it differed between the monarchs, but there were definitely different things around each reign that distinguished them. And so, yeah, and that's almost part of the larger question of like, or the larger part that we're our own country, so we have like the whole system set up.
Were we, I don't know if it's a weird question, I'm going to sound really, but were we, even prior to America coming in, did we have heavy politics?
Very.
Wow.
And one of my Kupuna's chapters just popped into my mind because he writes, America thinks they know politics. We know.
Really?
We know how to do politics.
And this was back in 1900s. He's writing this.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of like how it is today. Were there how many different parties, if there were, you can call them that back in the day, or was it just different, chiefly lines that were politicking?
Almost different perspectives, because they did come together as a nation state. So there was that solid, like it's a recognized entity, right? So, but within that, there was all kinds of things happening. And the newer Queen's Diaries that came out last year shows more of her diaries. And if you read that, you'll just read everything that went on, not only between royalty themselves, but with the people, with the missionary party or the reform party, and trying to get the U.S. in, even though U.S. had already signed 3 treaties with Hawaii prior, Treaty of Friendship, etc. So, I mean, it's where to start with the politics.
I was just, because it totally trips me out, because, sometimes we have this view that, we have our monarch and things were just so like, we knew who was going to be the king or the queen, and things were just set by genealogy, and things were set by tradition, but there's a lot of people just do it my way. No, do it my way.
Yeah. Well, Lili'uokalani was named by her brother.
That's right.
So when he passed in 1891, she did take the throne. And they had already tried to they did dispossess him through the Bayonet Constitution. So when she came in, why they overthrew her was because she wanted to pass a new constitution.
Was there anybody else, if he didn't appoint her, who would it have been?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
I always think that's like, okay,
yeah.
Who? Here's one. We'll kind of wrap up with this. If the overthrow didn't happen in your Manao, in your Ike, what do you think Hawaii would be like?
Well, it's almost like, in my mind, it's not even the overthrow. It's the perception of what happened at the overthrow, because the U.S. we don't have a treaty of annexation, right? So it's not even all those political instances within like a 10-year span to the 1900 Organic Act. None of that's legal. So it's not necessarily, it's the idea that they didn't follow international law. And so having more knowledge of that part, for a lot of people, the kingdom is not gone, right? Because it was never extinguished.
Now I think about that question I just asked. It's like I'm asking a question about something that doesn't really exist.
Well,
more or less. You know what I mean? It's like, well, you can ask me that question.
Well, no, but it's a fair question, because for a lot of people in reality, it did, that was the thing that took out the government, but you can't take out a sovereign state. And so that's why, we nerd out in political science. When you talk about the nation state, it's like, no, that's a real thing. Hawaiian Kingdom is a real recognized state. It was never legally dismantled.
I like that, because we always use the analogy of like museums, right? It's always weird to walk in a museum and you see these displays of your people going, wait, museums are for things that happened in the past, but we're still here.
Right.
It's like, that's kind of weird. Anyway, mahalo, one, for the ho'okupu, for the gift, for sharing your Manao and Ike with us. Hopefully that intrigued you to go look a little bit deeper into the overthrow. Maybe you understand it. I mean, there's so many different aspects. I definitely want to bring you back again because there's so many things about your Ike and Mana'o that you can share. And I love the fact that you look into parts of Namea Hawaii, parts of Hawaiian culture that we may have not looked at. So mahalo for being here. This is how we do it on Culturize. We're sharing and learning and talking about culture. Culturize.